Hello and welcome back to the Winning Agenda. My name is Jesse Muirman-Marshall and I'm very excited to be here with the semi-finals from the Sorcery League Season 1. So this is the online league run by the Sorcery team and run by Ira, who's I believe a pinch hitter for the Sorcery team, but is definitely there and thereabouts. And lovely that Eric's Curiosa decided to sponsor the first season of the league, and I think hopefully will be sponsoring the league moving forward. So if you do want to get involved and play in the league, head along to the league Discord, which I'll put a link to in the comments. So we're playing Battle Mage against Sorcery here. We're on the play because we're the high seed, which is great. Opted to keep a hand with 2 different towers, a free city, 2 Men of Leng, and a Haast Eagle. So what we're hoping for here is to use the Haast Eagle Men of Leng combo, hopefully get across the board with the Men of Leng from the middle site as quickly as possible, and to use the free city in the middle of the map to play a bit of defense as well. So we start off with, we've got the option here to go to 3 mana this turn and play the Haast Eagle on the middle site, or to play the free city on the middle site. Decide to play the free city and the Men of Leng, partly on the off chance that our opponent chooses to go wide anyway, and because they've got the foot soldier. So if we'd played the Dark Tower, then the Haast Eagle moved up the first Men of Leng, if our opponent didn't play in the middle site, we would then have to play in their middle site, move the Haast Eagle, attack with the Men of Leng, or attack with the Haast Eagle, attack with the Men of Leng, but our opponent has the foot soldier to block the Men of Leng strike anyway, so we wouldn't be getting through. So this is just more of a setup to get 2 Men of Leng on the board and present the double threat. We then get a Root Spider, which is unfortunately one that's almost impossible for mono air to remove currently. All of the air removal spells operate on the same plane or the same region as the spellcaster, and very unfortunately, given our opening hand, Root Spider pretty much blanks Men of Leng. So as predicted, our opponent's gone sideways at the start, left open the middle channel. Our Men of Leng, if we had been able to play that Rolling Boulder and kill the Root Spider there, that would be amazing. But because it's burrowed, we can't do anything about it. So they've got the burrowed Root Spider protecting that home square. And the reason that protects them from Men of Leng is that if Men of Leng tries to strike the Avatar, it will be disabled because it will be on that site that the Avatar's on. So the only way that we could get around that and actually hit the Avatar is either if the Root Spider moves or if the Avatar moves off that square, because we haven't got anything that will relocate our opponent's Avatar, and we also haven't got anything that in mono air that will kill the Root Spider while it's burrowed. So we're in a bit of a bind. The one thing that we do have here though is the Haast Eagle play on that tower means that we can move diagonally carrying the Men of Leng over to the, I think it's a Lone Tower or a Dark Tower they've got on their side there, that the foot soldiers are currently on. So we're going to be able to attack diagonally with the Haast Eagle, carry across one of the Men of Leng, and then strike the site. So they've got now 2 foot soldiers, which means they've got 2 blockers, which means we're not going to be getting any damage in after doing that. But at least we're removing some of their blockers and getting some attackers set up for the following turn, some threats that they have to respond to. So they common sense for a berry, pretty frustrating because it means that they've got an answer next turn, but at least they had a bit of a turn off this turn. Other than creating the foot soldier, they just common sensed and went and fetched the berry. So we draw a Phase Assassin, which still can't unfortunately strike on that home site. So the Haast Eagle and then carries the Men of Leng across to the tower. Presumably the foot soldier goes ahead and blocks the Haast Eagle's strike, which it does, which then allows our Men of Leng to safely attack the other foot soldier, clear off that site, and set us up for some attacks next turn. We can then play this Phase Assassin, or we can play the Screaming Skull on our Avatar if we wanted. I mean, we could have played the Screaming Skull on the Men of Leng potentially and got a double strike in there, but the risk of losing the Screaming Skull would not really be worth it. Although in a matchup where they've got a Root Spider defending their home square, Screaming Skull, a little bit less likely to be useful. It's more useful against minion spam, and we've just cleaned out a bit of the minion spam anyway with our guys. And it's unlikely there's going to be lots of small minions available for our Avatar to eat up. We also haven't got any mobility spells here, so we didn't draw a Blink, we didn't draw a Grapple, which is frustrating for the Battle Mage getting across the board. So we kind of went, if I'd known that there was going to be a Root Spider on the home site, obviously I would have mulliganed away the Men of Leng because they're very mediocre. If they can't actually strike the Avatar, they're just basically blank 2 for 2s. So we probably would have mulliganed looking for a blink or a grapple shot or something like that to get the Avatar in, because of course Root Spider only blanks minions, or only disables minions, it doesn't disable Avatars. So at this point in the game, we're going to try and use these minions that we've drawn early as best we can, hopefully draw out a few resources and a bit of tempo from our opponent removing them, and then we're going to really rely on our Avatar trying to do the bulk of the damage here, I think. So our opponent's gone ahead, played a Windmill, played the Berry, getting rid of the Hearst Eagle, which means we untap with 7 points of damage, and we've drawn a Blink here, which is nice. So unfortunately, can't get into combat with the Battle Mage with just a Blink because they've opted not to play on the middle side. So we move across with the Men of Lang, attack with the other Men of Lang on the site closer, because we just don't want to clump up our minions as much as possible. Although our opponent is going to be on Earthquake mana next turn, which is very scary when we have 3 minions grouped up on a block of 4 hexes that would be able to have an Earthquake played on it. So we're in a position here where our opponent, if they have Earthquake, they just get to blow us out and get rid of all our minions, but we can't really do much about that given the way that the Root Spider is clogging up the middle of the board there. So the other option that we could have taken here is to try and be a bit more aggressive with site placement, but it's pretty hard to block our opponent in. If we tried to block them into the left and stop them playing on the left-hand side of the board, they could just spread that way on their back row, they would be leaving them the right-hand side of the board anyway. So I think drawing spells here was okay for us, and at least it got us this Blink that's going to get our Battle Mage into combat next turn, hopefully on that Windmill. So they've got an Amazon Warriors, a 5 for 5, spending all 5 mana. And then it looks like they're going to consider what to do with their Root Spider. So leave the Root Spider where it is, protecting that home hex, fair enough. We untap, and looks like they might be thinking about moving the Amazon Warriors. No, leaving it where it is. On number 17 there. How are we going to deal with the 5-power minion? Oh, looks like they are still thinking. So they do go ahead and play the Amazon Warriors on that right-hand side there, site 16. And then we've got to think about how best to handle them, because it means that now we can't strike them with the Battle Mage, which is very annoying. So we're going to try and draw them into that square there using the Phase Assassin. They do eventually block the Phase Assassin, which means we lose it. But then we can blink in. So we can play the Philosopher's Stone on the Battle Mage. I'm just going to put it over there so we don't clog things up too much. And then we're going to blink in, draw a spell, and then attack the Amazon Warriors. We'll take 5, but at least we'll remove the Warriors. And then we'll draw another spell and untap our Battle Mage, which is a lot of movement for the Battle Mage this turn, which is nice. So hopefully remember to draw our 2 spells here. So we draw for the Blink, draw for the Battle Mage. So yes, 1 for the Blink, 1 for the Battle Mage. And then we've got, so we spent 2 mana out of 3. So we have 2 mana left. We've also got another Gothic Tower that we could play if we wanted to play the Hearst Eagle. But I think we're probably better off here just attacking with the Battle Mage. So we'll attack where we are for 3. And then we'll attack with the Men of Lang. And then unfortunately, yeah, we're 1 mana short of making another play here. So Hearst Eagle can't come down, but we do have the Flaming Sword for next turn, which is nice. So I've decided to attack on the home side instead, it looks like, rather than the site where the Men of Lang are. So 7 plays 15. We've got the Root Spider sitting underneath their home hex still, or the home square rather, keeping us well and truly out with our Men of Lang. But the 2 Men of Lang have survived, so although having them in hand when they can't actually strike the Avatar is not the best, at least they've done something. But we're now well and truly into the mid-game, and the Sorcerer's card draw advantage is really going to start coming out. We do have the Screaming Skull on the Battle Mage, and we've got Rolling Boulder and Flaming Sword, so we have the capacity to deal a fair amount of damage. You know, we're well and truly threatening Death's Door next turn, but they do have 6 mana now, and I think an Air Earth deck with 6 mana, you're expecting either some very large minions or some very effective removal. Instead we get Divine Healing, so they're going to gain 7 life, go up to 14. And we're now no longer threatening the kill, and we're also in a bit of trouble from that Dapper Vampire in the sense of that's more life gain. So I think one threat there from them in terms of putting us further away from winning rather than advancing their board. So if it was just one instance of life gain and then potentially another small play like a regular minion, then we would have been okay. But I think 2 instances of life gain or things that are threatening life gain here might be a little bit hard for us to come back from. But we do have, 2 plays. The biggest problem I think for us is that we're sitting on 3 mana. Because the Philosopher's Stone doesn't give a discount to non-elemental spells, so it doesn't make the Flaming Sword or the Rolling Boulder cheaper. At some point in the game, we're going to have to take a turn off with the Battle Mage if we do want to play out the site to be able to play those 4-cost relics. So we had to kind of get a bit aggressive early because we needed to back up those Men of Lang and get something happening here. With the Battle Mage early rather than getting to 4 sites, which is kind of where we'd usually like to be. But unfortunately, our opponent had the riposte with both the Divine Healing and the Dapper Vampire threat here, which we are now under pressure to remove, because if we don't remove the Dapper Vampire, then it's going to start gaining our opponent 4 life a turn and picking off our Men of Lang. So we can't really allow that to happen. So we blink across our Men of Lang here, drawing a spell and striking them because the Root Spider's moved off to the right. So they do lose a berry, they do lose 2 life. And that Dapper Vampire is going to be able to come in and strike on the diagonal to kill the Men of Lang, but at least we managed to get a card out of them with the berry. So that was somewhat of a decent trade for us. So we spent 1 of our 3 mana, we've got 2 mana left. And we've still got the Battle Mage untapped. So they're going to go up to 16 next turn, just by attacking with their Dapper Vampire. And if we attack and they defend with the Dapper Vampire here, we're in a little bit of trouble. So we opt not to allow them to both defend with the Dapper Vampire diagonally and then attack. Instead, we play out the site, play out the Hearth Eagle. So that was a good turn to take off for us in a way, because the puzzle we're facing is Dapper Vampire, if it can both attack and block in this first turn sequence, that's 8 life gained, which is probably just going to be too much. And we don't have the capacity to play the Flaming Sword next turn. So by taking the turn off from the Battle Mage attacking here, what we've done is allow ourselves the capacity to play the Flaming Sword next turn so that the Dapper Vampire can't safely block us because we're up to 4 power. If our opponent blocks our Battle Mage's strike with the Dapper Vampire, the Vampire will die, we'll draw a card, and we'll untap from the Screaming Skull. So the Root Spider, as predicted, moving back under the Sorcerer's square there, and an Aquamarine Core coming out. So not the best draw for our opponent hitting the core on that turn. They would have liked to hit sort of 2 action spells every turn now that they're up to 6 mana. But we don't know what the other spell in their hand is. And this is where the Sorcerer really is going to start to outpace us. Even though we've got a decent play, sometimes 2 every turn, they're going to have most likely 2 good plays, or at least 1 very good play, and then keep a card for next turn. So they get the blink here. When I was tossing up where to play that Hearth Eagle, and opted to play it forward in the space where the Dapper Vampire could come if it had blink and still strike it. And it's just unfortunate. I mean, I think it was dead to the blink no matter where it was, but if we played it further back on the board, or on the Free City, for example, at least the Dapper Vampire wouldn't be able to safely strike it. So probably an error for me. Well, I was playing around them. I was predicting that they didn't have blink. So it was a perfect turn for them to have the blink there. I hadn't seen any blink so far. Wasn't sure whether it was one that they would want in their build, but they had the blink there and it worked out perfectly for the Vampire. So the Vampire gets in, kills the Hearth Eagle, which is the biggest minion that we had on the board, and we were hoping to be able to attack over into the diagonal corner there on number 20 to present a 3 damage a turn threat. But as it was, it didn't quite get there. So that's an annoying loss for us. At least the one saving grace is that it drags the Vampire off to the left-hand side, which kind of opens up the right-hand side for our Voidwalk minions to try and get some damage in. and for our Men of Leng to run away into the right-hand corner there. So Men of Leng gets 2 in. And then we have the option of the Battle Mage trying to stay clear of the Dapper Vampire using the Flaming Sword, or playing out our 2 Voidwalk minions. And we opt, since we can double spell by playing the 2 Voidwalk minions with the Philosopher's Stone discount, we opt to play the 2 minions in the hope that they can get in a bit of damage next turn. So on the right-hand side, we're still, at all times, petrified of Earthquake. And our opponent is going to be able to just keep gaining a moderate amount of life every turn to really outpace our minions, or at least stop us from, if they didn't have life gain in the form of the vampire there, we're looking at being able to pretty much get them to Death's Door in 1 or 2 turns with what we have on the board. Whereas with the life gain, it's dragging that out significantly to 3 or 4 turns, which is more than enough time for them to draw an Earthquake or a mass removal spell with the double draw from Sorcerer. So things looking a bit dire here. It's not impossible, but our opponent has now gained 7 from the Divine Healing plus 8, I think, from the Dapper Vampire strikes at this point, or I think it'll be 8 after this turn. Yeah, so that's quite a bit, 15 life extra. Or even at the moment, without the Divine Healing and the Vampire, they'd be Death's Door. So the life gain coming in handy here. So another Root Spider comes in on that corner square, which is going to disable that second Men of Leng. And again, we've got no effective way, or no way at all really, to remove the Root Spiders whilst they're burrowed in our deck. So they are going to just keep blocking up those hexes and forcing us into some narrow corridors, unfortunately, ripe for the picking by Earthquakes and by Vampires. So an Autumn Unicorn comes down. Very unfortunate that our opponent moves the Vampire away back into the center. I mean, it makes sense, it's the right place to move it, but at that moment I was thinking, please just attack that site, the site that it was on, because then I can Rolling Boulder and kill both the Unicorn and the Vampire. But as it is, we're going to have to take a bit of damage killing the Unicorn using the Flaming Sword. At least we get to untap because of the Screaming Skull, but it's definitely not ideal. So another Spectral Stalker, not really going to be enough to outpace the Vampire, especially since they're forcing us back in towards the middle of the board and into Vampire range with our Stealth minions. With our Voidwalk minions. So the Phase Assassin now can't attack up into the corner because there's a Root Spider there. The Spectral Stalker also can't attack up onto that windmill safely because the Vampire can now strike it, which basically puts that attack as costing us, or gaining them 2 life rather than us getting any further towards killing them. So we attack with the Flaming Sword, deals us 4 damage because the Battle Mage strikes the Autumn Unicorn, or they strike each other. Battle Mage untaps, and we move back into that middle site that their avatar is on. Now, it's kind of unfortunate here, I think, that we chose to do that. It was probably an error because whilst it's good for the Flaming Sword for us to be on the same site as the avatar, I think it does open us up to Earthquake a bit more by having our minions quite clustered. So I think if I'd stayed on site 19 there, that windmill that the avatar, the Battle Mage was on, I think that probably would have been better, because if we lose both those 2 minions, the Phase Assassin and the Spectral Stalker, plus the relics that are on the Battle Mage this turn, it's going to be absolutely devastating because it will mean our Battle Mage will go back down to 3 power, it won't have the untap ability anymore, and it won't be able to even defend against the Dapper Vampire effectively, or rather the Dapper Vampire will be able to block it with impunity, deal us damage and not even die, and gain our opponent life. So our avatar being at 4 power is absolutely essential here for us to remain at all competitive in the game. So we've got them down to 6. They're attacking a site again here with the Vampire, which is interesting. So we go down to 3. And I think they thought they gained life from that strike. So we've told them they don't actually gain life from attacking a site. And they're going to do something different instead. Because it's different to lifelink in Magic. It's only gains damage from strikes, whereas units that attack undefended sites don't actually strike. The avatar just loses life equal to the power of the attack. Strikes are reserved for things actually hitting other things, so units hitting each other or units directly hitting an avatar. So here comes that Earthquake. So very unfortunate. The Dapple Vampire does get out of the way, avoids the Earthquake, and we do go ahead and lose both of those relics, which is a huge deal. The Root Spider then also gets to pick up the relics, and the Root Spider could actually then, I mean, it's 3 power, so it couldn't safely do it, but it could unburrow there and kill us, put us at death's door, I think, with the Flaming Sword, because it would be 3 power. But I think our opponent's tapped it. I'm not sure what happened there. I think they're just maybe moving it to keep disabling things on the Sorcerer's site. I'm not sure. But yeah, that Earthquake, we did make the mistake of attacking onto the village. We should have kept our avatar on the windmill to play around that Earthquake. But and now, of course, the Root Spider picks up the 2 relics and it moves across, opting to play it safe and take the relics away. So we draw an Amethyst Core. Bad time to draw a core. They're on 6. Unfortunately, we can't... Oh yeah, we accidentally buried our Men of Ling that was under that on top of that site. The Root Spider's under. We can't deal 6 damage this turn and put them to death's door, which is unfortunate. So we can play the core. We can play the Rolling Boulder, give it a push, and put them to 2, but that's not going to be enough. We can play a Phase Assassin and a Spectral Stalker, and again, that's probably not going to be enough. I think the best play that we could conceivably make here is probably play the Phase Assassin and the Spectral Stalker in the same places as the ones we played last turn, and then attack across to the right, because it means at least the Dapple Vampire won't be able to strike us effectively and gain life. It'll have to just put us to death's door. But I think at the moment we get to death's door, it's pretty difficult for us to get away from the vampire. So the other option we've got would be to play one of the minions on the free city, because it's actually hard for the vampire to come in and strike us on the free city. Because at least our minion that they strike would... or the free city firstly could defend the attack, but it would also be hard for our minion. It would be possible for our minion that they're attacking to actually join in the defense and kill the vampire if we wanted to. But instead we play the 2 guys. It looks like we're thinking about playing them on the left. I think we're thinking about whether we can defend to stop ourselves going to death's door, but I think what we're instead going to do, so we have attacked across to the right, and then I think we're looking at maybe trying to get our opponent to death's door the following turn, and see if we can finish them off with the Rolling Boulder, if we can keep ourselves alive whilst we're at death's door. Which is going to be hard to do, given they've got Root Spiders to deal with our blockers, and they've got a Dapple Vampire that's got some pretty good attack range, and they're drawing 2 spells a turn. But we're going to play to our outs and see what we can do. So they've drawn 2 spells, and the vampire can't gain them life this turn, but it will be able to put us to death's door, and there'll be nothing we can do about that if it just attacks that Dark Tower in the middle of the board. So it gets in, attacks for 5. One interesting thing actually about that turn before is that if rather than the Amethyst Core we had drawn a Grapple Shot, we would have actually been able to deal the 6, so we could have played the Grapple Shot, grappled into the avatar, and then attacked for 3, which would have put them to death's door, and then we would have had pretty much guaranteed lethal from the Rolling Boulder the following turn. So a Grapple Shot that turn would have been an out, but not going to quite get there. So they had both the Blink and the Strike, which again puts us in a really difficult position because it gets the... unfortunately, it gets the Dapple Vampire on top of our avatar, which makes it very hard for us to run away, and it gets them to such high life that we actually have to attack with the whole team to put them to death's door, which is not really great for us. It also, the Royal Bodyguard that they've played is not irrelevant either, because it's going to actually soak up the damage from the Rolling Boulder, which is quite funny. So we can Rolling Boulder their avatar, which is also going to kill the Dapper Vampire because it's come on top of us. So we'll give the Boulder a push, get that over there. And then they're going to choose whether they want to take the damage on the Royal Bodyguard or take the damage on their Avatar. So it looks like they're going to maybe keep the Bodyguard alive for being at Death's Door. That's definitely a possibility. So they're going to opt, to take the 4, which means we can put them to Death's Door with the Phase Assassin on the Windmill. And then we've got to make a choice about where we want to put this Spectral Stalker. So do we want to move it across to the Free City, for example, to then maybe try and come up the middle after that if the game continues, or do we want to get them onto the same side on the Windmill? I think we're wary here of the fact that we did get Earthquaked, so moving everything onto the same site, not ideal, although we do have to be careful of the Lightning Bolt situation. So we play the other Spectral Stalker out to try and go fetch that Rolling Boulder that we've rolled across the board. So both at Death's Door, does our opponent have the way to get to us? They do. So they've got the last blink, or the third blink, there might be a fourth one, gets the Royal Bodyguard across and lets them attack us for the win. So super close. All 3 blinks there came in really handy for them, gaining some life off the Dapper Vampire with 2 of them, and then getting the Royal Bodyguard in for the death blow. So a very close, very tight game. Both got to Death's Door. Very interesting match. Just the Root Spiders holding out the Men of Leng and stopping us from being able to attack the Avatar made a huge difference early. And then the life gain from the Vampire and the Divine Healing just couldn't quite get over the top of that in time. But if we had managed to draw that grapple shot that turn before, could have conceivably got our opponent to Death's Door first. So a very, very close one and a great game. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with game 2 shortly. Cheers.